Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today I want to talk to you about how to pack for your first motorcycle trip. So this is very important because you're going to find as you get off on your first motorcycle trip, every little detail matters here. So the first thing you need to think about is how are you going to pack your bike? And that's all coming back to what kind of bike do you have? Do you have a tall sissy bar? Do you have saddlebags? Do you have a tour pack? All of these things are going to come into play when you're looking at packing for your motorcycle trip. If you have only a sissy bar, then you're going to need to figure out how to get all of your belongings packed onto that sissy bar. And that could be quite difficult. If you don't have saddlebags, I would definitely recommend looking into the soft saddlebags from Thrash and Supply. They're temporary, and if you're just going on a trip and then you want to take them off, you have something then, a little bit more storage. Saddlebags really come in handy, way more handy than you may think. So even if that's just having tools or a tire repair kit on top of your clothes, it's essential, really. So if you have a saddlebag, then you really need to think about, is your saddlebag locking? When I like to travel and put anything that's valuable in a locking saddlebag. The other thing is a lot of motorcycle riders are Second Amendment believers. And if you're exercising your Second Amendment right and you do not have a concealed carry license, you're going to want to lock your firearm in a saddlebag at all times, especially if you're going to a state like California. And I believe my cousin, a police officer there, told me to take the ammo out, lock it in a separate saddlebag just to be sure. If you're riding with any extracurriculars on you, if you know what I mean. And if you have a tour pack, this is where strategically packing your motorcycle can really save you a lot of grief. As your motorcycle leans to the left on your kickstand, I put all of my rain gear in my right saddlebag. That way, if I have something, like if I have a storm coming at me and I need to pull over, then I pull over, put my kickstand down, let it bike clean, and I can naturally access the right bag with a little bit more accessibility. Packing for a trip, you want to try to make sure you have as much of your essential gear with you as possible. If you're going across the country, or if you're trying to do it like a nomad, then you're going to have a camp roll with you. So for me, what I did is I have a self-inflating camp roll that I strapped to my tour pack. Before I had a tour pack, I had a small sissy bar with a little luggage rack on it. And I took two small pieces of metal that I found at the hardware store and I zipped it to that luggage rack. That way I had a wider rack to hold my inflatable sleeping mat kind of steady in the wind. And that worked for me, to have my sleeping roll there. And then one other thing that you're going to want to look at when you're packing for a motorcycle road trip is your luggage needs to be waterproof. At the very least, it needs to be water resistant. Because as much as you may think that riding a motorcycle across the country sounds incredibly fun and adventurous, it is. But you're not always going to get hot sunny days. You're going to hit the rain. You're going to hit cold weather. And when you do, you're going to want to have a rain suit, multiple layers, multiple gloves. So all of those things come into play. With that waterproof suitcase or waterproof luggage that you have, this is where I like to put all of my things that I have that are too big to fit in my saddlebag. and not very valuable. So I put like my pillows in there, you know, my toothpaste, my toiletries and stuff like that. And anything I might need, like this will come into play a little later in the video. When I have multiple jackets on a long distance ride, I like to put one in that weather resistant bag that's just right behind me on my passenger seat, and I use that as a backrest. So I have my leather jacket in there, or my mesh jacket, depending on the weather at the time. And then I have all of my pillows, maybe my sleeping bag, an extra blanket, like a rumpled blanket in there. And that's how I have a back support right here on my passenger seat. I put it here, and then I can lean up against my waterproof bag, and that's from Zero 3D. And I cannot recommend that bag from Zero 3D enough. I think it's worked for me amazing. And I went through some severe rainstorms, and none of my gear inside got wet. So shout out Zero 3D. Awesome bag. Yeah, all of that is also going to affect how your motorcycle rides. So once you get everything packed onto your motorcycle, you need to figure out how you're going to strap it onto your motorcycle. And once you get everything strapped onto your motorcycle for the first time, you need to do a check. So that's where coming into making a test trip comes in. And we're not talking about a trip off the block, man. You need to go for a couple 100 miles to really see how your motorcycle is going to act with that weighted load on it. Not only that, but how you're going to feel with everything, just to see if you need to change your setup at all. So for the first time that I took a real long distance trip, I went from Hermosa, South Dakota to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I camped at the Harley Davidson dealership there, and then packed up and came back. And it was about right. It was, you know, a 6-hour ride on a motorcycle, and it gave me a real feel of, okay, well, if I'm going to ride to Colorado, it's 6 hours to get to the edge of Colorado for where I live. So then if I want to keep riding, I need to be able to ride for longer than that, double than that, or triple or quadruple than that. So you really need to make sure that you're comfortable with your setup. If you take your test trip and you feel any pinches in your muscle or any fatigue somewhere, maybe you need to change your handlebar setup, you got to get yourself set up for the trip. Maybe you need highway pegs. The more you can set yourself up for comfortability, the longer you're going to be able to ride and the more comfortable you're going to be. The other thing that you really need to consider is all of the things that you're strapping onto the motorcycle. You can't just use a ratchet strap and strap it down and have a long tail of the strap loose. Everything that you do has to be tight, because as you're driving at 75, 80 miles an hour, everything is flapping and it's going to come loose. Any little opening, you got to imagine the fabric of a bag is almost like a sail of a parachute or something. It catches the wind and it flattens and it creates resistance. So anything that's not strapped down as tight as it can get will create wiggle, and if there's wiggle, it will start moving, it'll create a gap, and then you'll lose something. If you guys don't know the Motogiant, he had something like that. He had a sleeping bag fall off of the back of his bike, and he lost one of his legs because he crashed his motorcycle after the sleeping bag with the strap flew into the back of his rear wheel. So I really recommend going to Harbor Freight or anywhere you want to get them, but they make these motorcycle cargo net bungee straps, and they are lifesavers on a trip. And any kind of bungee strap, adjustable tightening bungee straps are the way to go. So Figure out what straps you need, and then always carry a few extras. Yeah, when you go on that test trip, try to make sure that you do it at a far enough distance to get a real feel of what a long distance trip would be like, but a close enough distance that if you need help for any reason, a friend or a family member can come get you. The next thing is you got to plan your route. Where are you going, and how do you plan your route? So, this is a really good part of the video to think about on your very first motorcycle road trip. Wherever you want to go, let's say if you're in Nashville, Tennessee, and you want to come to the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, type that into Google. Go Google Maps, Nashville to Sturgis. And this doesn't matter, wherever you want to go, you just do this and follow the same directions, you'll get there. So you find the overall distance, and regardless of the miles, you want to look at the hour recommendation that it's going to give you. Because you have to look at if it says it's going to take you 20 hours in a car, it's going to take you 24 hours on a motorcycle. You stop a lot more on a motorcycle, you get way more fatigue, the weather affects you, the sun affects you, dehydration affects you. There's so many things that go into riding a motorcycle long distance that you are going to take longer than you think to get to where you're going. So I would personally recommend that you only put 400-mile distances in a day. So whatever your grand total distance is, divide that by 400. That's how many days it's going to take you to get to your destination. Now, can you ride more than 400 miles in a day? Absolutely. You can ride 1,000 miles in a day. If you haven't seen my video about riding 1K in a day, click the link here and check that out. That's a whole thing, the Saddle Sore 1000 challenge or the Ride 1K in a Day challenge. You can do it, but it's extremely hard. And here's what you need to think about. I went to California and back last summer, up the Pacific Coast Highway, through the Redwoods and back. Well, by the time I was going back into Utah on the return trip, I was so exhausted physically and mentally that I kind of had a breakdown. But I had to hole up in a hotel for a couple of days because I was just exhausted. What I'm trying to tell you is keep a pace that you can sustain. If by only doing 400 miles, you can wake up and do another 400 miles and wake up and do another 400 miles. If you start pushing yourself past that, especially if you start pushing yourself 500 miles in a day, you're going to realize that you're riding for 10 hours a day. And riding for 10 hours a day straight is very fatiguing on your body. Just the amount of wind going by your skin and how much water loss you're having is insane. So a lot to think about when you go on your trip. The best thing to do is to plan small increments that are actually attainable. I wouldn't recommend going over 400. If you want to push yourself, do 450 miles. If you can do 3 days of 450 miles, then you can increase. If you're a seasoned rider and you've got a good body and you can handle it, then feel free to do as many miles as you can. The next thing to think about is have a backup plan. What I mean by that is always think about where you're going and how you can get out of a bad situation if it happens. No matter what, you should bring some basic tools with you on your trip. If something rattles off your bike, you'd like to be able to put it back on. You'd have a couple handfuls of zip ties. If something comes off and you can't put it back on, you can zip it back on. If you can carry it, you have the space, get a tire puncture kit. If you have the space, get a tire inflator. All of these things can save you in a pinch situation. Very luckily, I've never been stranded on the side of the road with baby girl here. As much as they say Harley Davidsons aren't reliable, The other thing to think about is, do you have roadside assistance? If your bike breaks down and you're in the middle of nowhere, can you get a tow truck to come tow you to the nearest dealership or maintenance shop? That is a huge perk. If you don't have it because you've never really done a long distance trip, totally understandable. But if you're going to go on a long distance trip, you should probably get that before you go. The other thing is, tell a family member, tell a friend or a family member if somebody has a trailer or something, have them on standby. If something happens to you, maybe they can come get you. One thing to also think about is be aware of your surroundings and where you're riding at. Something that happened to me in Nevada is I was riding and an old man was broken down on the side of the road with his Harley. So I pulled over and I asked him, "Hey, are you all right?" He said, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm just going to push to that gas station over there." I asked if he wanted help. He said no, because he was waiting for somebody already. And I had this realization that I don't know exactly how long it is between gas stops here. And if I run out of water in the middle of this desert, it was over 100 degrees. And if you've ever been on that strip of desert between Las Vegas and California, there's miles and miles of nothing. You're stuck in the sand desert. And it just made me realize that if I was to break down here, I would be stuck in the sunlight. There's not a single tree, so you would just be baking out there in the sun. So I ended up going to get 4 large water bottles that I kept on the bike that I didn't drink or use. Because at the time, it was so hot that I was pouring the water on myself out of my Camelback, and I had a couple of extra water bottles. I would stop at every gas station and soak myself down. So just be aware of where you're riding and what kind of dangers that might persist. If you're going up into the mountains, have extra layers. If you have a huge breakdown, do you have the money to fix it? Or do you have the space on your credit card to fix it? You do not want to leave your home out on a motorcycle road trip on a hairstring budget with no credit and find yourself in a pickle because your bike broke down. So think about that before you're leaving. Do you actually have the money to go on this trip? What if something happens? The next section we're going to talk about here is what to pack on your trip. First and foremost, this is my opinion. You should always, always, always take a leather jacket on a long distance motorcycle trip. Your leather is like your sword that you kept on you at all times in the ancient times. Okay? Without it, you are toasted. And it's so versatile that it can help you through many, many situations. The only time you really don't want a leather, if it's 95 degrees or hotter. And that's certainly reasonable if it were, if you're one of those guys that loves to feel the wind on your skin. I do too. I have a mesh jacket with armored panels, and I have the mesh jacket with me. I like to have both jackets. If you have to pick between a jacket because of space, definitely pick the leather jacket. You don't want to pick a mesh panel jacket. I have a mesh panel. I have 2 mesh panel jackets. One of them it has a rain insert on the inside to make it waterproof. And that just would not have cut it in some of the situations that I have been in. So take it from me, especially like in California in June, I was going across, along the Pacific Coast Highway, and the ocean fog was coming in the mornings when I was leaving, and it was so cold that I was having my full setup, a sweatshirt, my leather, and my rain suit with my rain gloves because I was so cold. Now, that being said, I also recommend that you wear rip-resistant jeans. I always try to ride with my rip slide-resistant jeans. They're Kevlar lined. That way, if you have the unfortunate situation that you go down, you are not going to have your jeans rip right open and have road rash all over your lower half, I should say. I like to bring 2 pairs of gloves. I like to have full finger gloves and half finger gloves. But I also have a set of rain gloves. Rain specific gloves are a game changer. If you've never tried them, take it from me, go get them. If you don't have them, you don't want to buy them, it is best to have 2 sets of full gloves. That way, when you go through a rainstorm, you can take off your wet gloves and put on a freshie. Over the ankle boots is always suggested when you're riding a motorcycle. I definitely suggest bringing over the ankle boots. But because, you know, when you're riding your oboes all day, your feet get all sweaty and hot. You just want to take your boots off. And especially if you're going to a place like the rally, you want to have something comfortable to walk around in. So I have either a pair of gym shoes, or even better is just a pair of Hey Dudes. They're lightweight, they are flexible, you can throw them anywhere basically, and then you have a pair of shoes to change into when you're done riding for the day. On top of that, if you're a cold sensitive person, you just bring layers. You never know when you're going to need to layer up because it dropped down in temperature, or even if you want to have a long sleeve sun shirt. That way, if it just gets blistering hot and you're in the middle of the Nevada desert, you can take your leather off and you have a sun shirt, even though it's not recommended by the internet trolls. And I also like to carry a full rain suit at all times. A full one-piece suit by Revit is what I have. And I also have the rain booties from Harley Davidson. If you've not used the rain booties, but you have used rain suits, you are missing out. The first time I wore a rain suit, the water ran right down my leg and into my freaking boot. And the first time I wore the gaiters, I went through a torrential downpour going to Colorado, and my feet were dry afterwards. I could not believe it. So, full rain suit, rain gloves from Thrash and Supply, and the rain booties from Harley Davidson. That is going to change your life if you get caught in a rainstorm on a motorcycle, I can guarantee you. Are you moto camping? If you are moto camping, you need to bring a tent, you need to bring a pillow, you need to bring something to sleep on. Unless you are a freaking rugged man and you can sleep on the gravel, I totally recommend that self-inflating air pad. And if you haven't seen those rumple blankets, they're like blankets that you can just stuff into a little crush pouch, and they're great. They provide you with a lot of warmth and they don't take up a lot of space, and you can even squish them down even further to take up less space. So I hope that helped you guys in how to plan a motorcycle trip for the first time. If you have any questions, comment below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and I'd like to help you in any way that I can. All right, guys? Be safe out there. So what I was saying too about why you should wear the rip-resistant gear and all of your leathers and everything. The hard fact is, guys, when you're going on a motorcycle road trip, you're on a motorcycle for longer periods of time than you typically are, which means you're at a greater chance statistically to get into a motorcycle accident. So if you're ever going to wear protective gear, make it on your long distance trips. All right, guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs button for me. If you're not subscribed already, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. I have more Sturgis motorcycle content, how to plan Sturgis motorcycle trip, what's coming on for the 85th rally. I'll see you guys soon.